Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MetaPlanet Madness. My name is Peter Duan. I also go by the Twitter handle BTC Bullrider. So what are we going to talk about today? As you can probably tell, there are no guests. It's just me today. And I just took a lot of your guys' feedbacks to heart in the regards that you guys would like a lot more analysis going forward. And so hopefully with my 14 years of traditional finance experience, I can provide that for you. So I am going to share my screen. If you guys can just simply confirm, anyone in the chat, that you can see it, that will be great. Let me just double check. Yeah, if someone just could in the chat give me a thumbs up or a note saying that you can see it, that'd be great. I am going to now show you my PowerPoint. Okay. Perfect. Let me just double check something. Bear with me, as it's a bit hard to do with just one person. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, so what are we talking about today in episode 6? Well, before we jump into that, there is some housekeeping notes. So first of all, this is never financial advice. This is just me being a Gigabull MetaPlanet shareholder. I'm just very, very excited to dive into this investment with the rest of the community. But nevertheless, this is never financial advice, but rather these are just simply my thoughts. Also, I am a Bitcoiner, and I believe most of you here are also fellow Bitcoiners. And with that in mind, we have this famous phrase, don't trust, verify. So everything that I say, I try to be as factual as possible, but of course I'm human and therefore bound to make some mistakes. It is on you at the end of the day to verify the facts that I say and also apply it into your own life. Number 3, this is always a live event that will go on Saturdays at noon Pacific, unless otherwise stated. It will be redistributed into the community via YouTube on the channel called Bull Standard. Also, I encourage everybody to join the live chat so that you guys can ask me questions throughout, so that hopefully at the end I can address them and answer them. This one in particular, this episode in particular, is going to be very important for you to be alive, simply because I am going through my first ever price projections based upon MetaPlanet's recent 555 plan. And finally, I am nothing without this beautiful community. And frankly, I do spend a lot of time, trying to add value to you guys. I don't ask for anything back other than if you find this valuable, please like and retweet this live video. And with that in mind, let's move ahead. So the agenda is just in 3 parts. First of all, we're going to address the PFIC tax issue. I'm going to address, what is it, first of all, and is this a big issue that you should consider? Second of all, I'm going to briefly recap Dylan's 555 plan that he recently jumped on a live spaces to recap. I highly encourage everyone to re-listen to it, because it's not just him reading off the slides, but rather he's providing some very interesting alpha that I will cover. And finally, the meat of this is going to be my price projection model. I am going to try to open source this model. Let me know if you guys are interested in the comments to see if you guys want access to this model, okay? So first and foremost, I am going to talk about the PFIC issue. So what does PFIC stand for? PFIC stands for Passive Foreign Investment Company. Now, this is a US-based tax rule that's meant to prevent Americans from deferring or avoiding taxes by investing in foreign companies that mostly earn passive income, like interest, dividends, or capital gains. So why should US investors care in the first place? Well, obviously, you and I know that MetaPlanet is a Japanese company, and they do sell its shares into the American markets through the MetaPlanet OTC desk. So this is an issue because it potentially is categorized as a PFIC investment. What are the consequences of such? Well, first and foremost, it's bad tax treatment in the regards that gains may be taxed at the highest possible rate rather than the lower capital gains rate. Second of all, there might be interest penalty. The IRS assumes that you've been deferring tax for years and charges interest on your gains, even if you just sold the stock. Finally, it's complicated reporting for yourself or your CPA. You must file special forms, in this case, Form 8621, every year for each PFIC you own, even if you didn't sell. So, where do we stand? Well, Simon, as you know, is a very, very in touch CEO with the community, right? He wrote this very long and detailed note. I know it's a bit hard to read just a single block, so I kind of pulled aside some quotes that I think is substantial, and therefore I will read in case you're walking your dog and can't read it on the screen. So he said, we expect that substantially all of our taxable income generated during the 2025 taxable year will be active income for these purposes. Under the existing IRS guideline, we believe that substantially all of our goodwill can be categorized as an active asset for these purposes. End quote. Another quote, given that there are uncertainties in the application of these rules, however, we recognize that it is possible the IRS may disagree with our determinations and may assert that we are a PFIC for the 2025 taxable year. I think this is really important. He says, we are currently discussing with our advisors in order to provide more definitive guidance to shareholders, including whether we may provide information to enable shareholders to make a quote unquote qualified electing fund election with respect to the MetaPlanet shares and expect to provide such additional guidance in the near future. At the end of the day, and I bolded this, we urge MetaPlanet shareholders to consult their individual tax advisors. Okay, so we have members of the community dive further into this. I was able to go into the MetaPlanet dojo. Shout out to Climb and Vince for putting it together. And this gentleman or gal by the name of X Factor wrote the following. He or she said, I took a few minutes and developed the summary of the meeting from the global/tax expert at a Big Four firm. I attached that information here. This is not financial advice, and please do your own research, but I thought I'd share the results with the Discord community. He says, kind of long story short, we need MetaPlanet to get IRS to agree that MetaPlanet isn't a PFIC. Otherwise, we have a couple of other routes, but they're not great. So what is in the summary? Okay. And again, I just took various screenshots within this. I'm going to provide everything that X Factor provided. But again, I'm going to read this to you in case you're, again, walking your dog and can't read the screen. So number one, getting the IRS to agree that MetaPlanet is not a PFIC is our best option as U.S. shareholders. There are two main paths forward. Option A, MetaPlanet hires a Big Four type firm to conduct a PFIC analysis and file a private letter ruling. This is the most definitive route. A private letter ruling is a binding decision from the IRS, and if favorable, would remove uncertainty for shareholders and eliminate the need for QEF reporting or concerns about excess distribution taxation. A Big Four firm would need approximately 6 to 12 weeks to complete their PFIC analysis, after which the IRS will take an approximately 6 to 12 months to issue a decision. That said, there are mechanisms to expedite the IRS review in time-sensitive situations. Option B, MetaPlanet does not seek a private letter ruling, and each U.S. shareholder takes an individual position. In this scenario, each shareholder evaluates MetaPlanet's PFIC status and includes Form 8621 with their tax return. It is strongly recommended to attach a proactive position letter explaining why you believe MetaPlanet is not a PFIC. Shareholders may choose to file for a private letter ruling themselves or take the position and be prepared to defend it in the event of audit. While less definitive than option A, this approach allows for documentation of reasonable cause and may help mitigate future penalties in the IRS if the IRS later disagrees. Number 2, is MetaPlanet a PFIC? Will a position letter be enough to satisfy the IRS? This is the response to that question. So you're not going to get a snap judgment here. Even big four tax professionals are careful when giving firm opinions on PFIC classification due to its complexity and the need for deep factual analysis. That said, I've had early discussions with one of the top PFIC experts in a big four firm, and the initial feedback was cautiously optimistic. She responded positively to the goodwill argument that Simon raised in his recent post, i.e., that MetaPlanet's goodwill is derived from active operations and market-based valuation, and should therefore be considered an active asset under IAS rules. She was more measured on other elements of the position letter. Like any high-stakes tax position, some arguments will be stronger than others. All in, I'd handicap it at a 60-40 odds in our favor that the IRS accepts a well-documented claim that MetaPlanet is not a PFIC. Bottom line, we're not in the clear, but this is a defensible position, especially if supported by the kind of documentation a big four firm would provide in a PLR filing. What about the QEF? Isn't that our safety net? So let's define the role of a qualified electing fund, or known as a QEF. The QEF election is made by the US shareholder, but in order to make it, MetaPlanet must provide specific financial data to shareholders annually. This includes ordinary income, capital gains, and other metrics defined by the IRS. If MetaPlanet is determined to be a PFIC by the IRS or by you, the taxpayer, then having access to this data is crucial for making a QEF election. It allows you to avoid the harsh excess distribution regime, which can result in extremely unfavorable tax treatment and compounding interest on gains. However, the ideal outcome is to avoid QEF entirely by having the IRS agree via a PLR or other means that MetaPlanet is not a PFIC in the first place. That said, if it's determined by the IRS or your own assessment that MetaPlanet is a PFIC, then yes, the QEF election is your best tool, but only if MetaPlanet supports shareholders by issuing the required QEF statement. All that to be said is, I'm sure Simon and team are working on this avidly, and also it doesn't hurt that Eric Trump is also on our board of directors, okay? So I'm going to take a pause here real quick and just look back to see if we are still live. Again, I don't see it on my end, so if you guys can simply confirm. He says that you guys can't see my slides. Okay. Man, that's terrible. Let me see if I can, hold on. Okay, let me try to see if I can provide the slides again. I apologize if you guys couldn't originally. Entire screen. Okay. Okay, so I shared the entire screen now. I'm going back to my slides. Can you guys just simply confirm that you can see it? And if you can confirm, what am I showing on my screen? Could you just simply type it out in the chat? I'm going to keep this on for another 10 seconds and then circle back to see if you guys can see my slides. No slides still, huh? Okay, now slides are good. Dual view, let's see. Does that help? Your face in the slides. Okay, you guys were able to see the Dylan 555 recap. Okay, perfect. I'm going to actually just go back to that. And now that you can see my full screen, let's go live again. Okay, so now that we've done the PFIC, and again, I'm going to recap in a thread later on. So I'm probably going to include the slides so you guys can recap, but I apologize you couldn't see it before. But now let's move on to part 2, which is Dylan's 555 plan recap. So I recently wrote a thread to talk about how Dylan hopped onto a live spaces to recap the 555 plan from his perspective. I highly encourage everybody to go and listen to it yourself. If not, you guys can read the thread, but I'm not going to go over through the entire thread, but I just do want to touch on a couple key things that he mentioned in the recap. So first of all, they've just issued a 555 plan. That means they're trying to issue an additional 555 million shares. The reason for that is by the year end 2026, they're trying to reach 100,000 Bitcoin. And then by the year end 2027, they're going to try to join the 1% club, which is 210,000 Bitcoin. Okay. Now, this is just a high level overview of their current fully diluted share count, which is 759 million. They just increased it to 555 million shares with 296 million authorized shares remaining. So all in to be said, this is going to be 1.61 billion total authorized shares. And this is going to be important later when I go over my slide, my price projection in my model. So another point that was not included in the original 555 plan slide deck, but was included in Dylan's talking point, was the fact that right now they are in MetaPlanet, that is in what's known as the standard market. So what does the standard market means? While it's never truly apples to apples to that of the US market, you can kind of think of the standard market as the Russell 2000 versus the prime market, which is Japan's S&P 500. So as you may know, the Russell 2000 locally in America is smaller emerging companies that are usually smaller cap, right? While obviously the S&P 500 is the 500 of the largest publicly traded companies in America. And so what that means is, yeah, you're with the big boys, okay? And just for some reference, MetaPlanet's trading volume accounted for 70% of the entire trading value of the standard market. So what I'm trying to get at is once MetaPlanet gets upgraded to the prime market, it could unlock significant passive inflows through index inclusion and institutional demand. So if I was to draw an analogy with that against, say, for instance, MSTR, it's going from the NASDAQ, which was a nice bump to MSTR's capital inflow, to the S&P 500 inclusion, which is going to be orders of magnitude bigger impact, right? And so I asked ChatGPT what is kind of the eligibility and the timeline. And it says governance and liquidity hurdles. The market cap should be greater than 10 billion yen, free floating, 35% tradable share ratio with enhanced disclosures. Also, MetaPlanet, since MetaPlanet already meets a cap, but must tick governance boxes, which lay out the realistic timing of, call it 6 to 12 months. I'm sure Simon and Dylan and the rest of the team at MetaPlanet are working feverishly to get themselves upgraded to the prime market. Here's a very interesting kind of passive inflow statistic, okay? So the standard market, which they're currently in, is only 28 trillion yen, while the prime market is 921 trillion, okay? So if you look at that, that is literally a 30x difference once they get included into the prime market. So that's one part. And this is probably the most bullish slide that was in the 555 plan. So this is this current trajectory of the total Bitcoin holdings. Right now, they're on pace to double the Bitcoin holdings every 62 days. And as you can see, this is a the correlation is quite strong. There's not too much deviations from this trend line, which means that it's very strong and persistent. And Dylan himself said that we are still very much in the early days of its growth period and therefore can foreseeably use this as a decent proxy to how fast it can double its Bitcoin holdings. So what does this really mean? Well, if you look at the various multiples to net asset value, using 3 as a base and 6 as a bull, using 3 as a base, by the end of this year, which is roughly 6 months, they're projected to get 22,000 Bitcoin, while if using the 6 multiple MNAV, they're projected to get 100,000 Bitcoin, okay? So I'm going to take a pause here again to just make sure that everybody was able to see that. Let me go back, and please in the comments confirm that you can see. So now what do you guys see? I'm just curious. If somebody in the comments can just drop something. Okay, well, I guess nobody is dropping anything, so it seems as if everybody was able to see it. Now I am just going to share my screen again, my entire screen, and go over what I believe is a reasonable pricing model. Okay, so I hope everybody can see this. I'm trying to blow it up as well as I can. So this is the model that I spent all day creating yesterday. It was a lot of fun. It brought me back to my Cantor Fitzgerald days as my first real job, graduated from UCLA. So it was very fun building this. But let me walk you through all the assumptions. Let me just take a step back, I guess. You know, in order, like I used to work in finance and used to create financial models. We have a saying in finance that it's garbage in, garbage out. So that means no matter how robust a model is, you have to make sure that the data that you feed it or the assumptions you make are clean assumptions. Okay, so let's walk you through it step by step. Okay, so this is the 6 months projection, assuming that Bitcoin prices is flat. So right now, Bitcoin prices is roughly around 105,000. Its share price is $11.11 USD. Its current MNAV multiple is 6.8, and this is what I got off of the MetaPlanet analytics. This 700. So this is current shares outstanding in the millions. So right now there's 759 million shares, and again I got it from the 555 plan slide that I showed you guys earlier. This is the monthly dilution rate, and again this is from the 555 plan. This is assuming a projected 6 months horizon. And again, this is assuming that Bitcoin prices are flat between now and 6 months from now. And so that means obviously the Bitcoin prices is 105,000. Okay. Now I'm going to use a bear case of 3 MNAV. And why I got 3 MNAV, I think it's important to actually look at the bull case of 7. Why did I get 7? Because that seems quite aggressive, right? Well, I went on to the MetaPlanet website. Shout out to Andrew, who's the head of engineering at MetaPlanet. He created a very beautiful dashboard of all the analytics. And one of those analytics is Bitcoin per 1,000 shares. Now, Andrew, if you're listening to this or anyone on the MetaPlanet team, I would love the opportunity to not only just be able to download the picture, but also download the raw data. Because the way I got it is I actually just went back to the website and hard coded these numbers that was reflected. So for example, in April 30th of 2024, the market cap of MetaPlanet was only 36.6 million. While the Bitcoin asset was 5.93 million. So that means they got a market cap, MNAV of 6.2. Now, I did this for every, call it 2 weeks, all the way until the most recent data point. And then I just simply converted this and hard coded it over here to map out the MNAV. What is interesting is the average MNAV is really strong at 6.9. And so that's where I use kind of the bull case over here of using 7 as the bull case, and then 5 as the base case, and 4 as the bear case, okay? Now, so because I use the slide of they double the Bitcoin every 62 days, that's roughly the bull case of That's using the bull case of number of days to double the Bitcoin, right? Which is 62 days. And again, I got it from the MetaPlanet 555 plan. Now, this is the difficult part. And I believe this is the linchpin of the entire model, is that it's quite difficult to project out the number of days to double the Bitcoin, simply because that is directionally related or directly related to MNAV, right? And so I, just for simplicity purposes, just showed that I'm going to use a 25% longer time frame to double Bitcoin per share, right? And so I just based on 1.25 times 62 days. And then over here, I am projecting a 50% longer to double Bitcoins per share, okay? So why that matters is because that's directly related to projected Bitcoin per share multiple, okay? And again, I won't want to dive into every single kind of like metric, but I'll open source this model to you guys so you guys can play with it. So those are the inputs that I have, right? Well, what are the outputs? Well, the outputs is the projected shares outstanding. So how I got here was I took the current shares outstanding, and then I times it by 1 plus the monthly dilution rate to the power of 6. Okay, so that means every month they're increasing their share base by 7.5%. So that means at the end of 6 months, the total shares outstanding is 1,171 times a million. Okay, so then I also applied a price multiple. So how I got here was I took B8, which is here. This is the price multiple. Again, this is assuming flat Bitcoin. So in this point, it's just multiplying by 1. That doesn't matter. Then I'm actually adjusting its current MNAV multiple, right? So its current MNAV multiple is 6.8, and then adjusting that downwards, assuming that, so it's 3 divided by 6.8. So I'm adjusting that downwards. And then I'm timesing it by the projected Bitcoin per share multiple. Okay, and I'll explain why that is important later. And then there is a dilution factor, right? So obviously, there, like, we've increased the number of shares. So how much do we increase it by? Well, we increased it by 65%. Okay, so when you kind of put all those assumptions together, you can then get a projected share price. Okay, so how did I get that? I take the current share price, I then multiply it by the price multiple, and then I times it by the total shares outstanding. Okay, so said another way, 6 months from now, using a 1 flat Bitcoin price and a monthly dilution of 7.5. While the MNAV gets crushed from 6.8 to 3, there's still a 41% upside from that. Okay, and that, my friends, is the bear case 6 months from now. It only gets more bullish from there. Okay, and so here's some other interesting metrics, right? And so what is the market cap 6 months from now using these assumptions? You just take the total shares outstanding, times it by projected share price, okay? And then you also have an increase in share count, right? So this is just total outstanding share count by the current shares outstanding. This is the current Bitcoin per share, which again, I hard-coded and got from the 555 plan. And then I times this by, I times the current Bitcoin per share by the projected Bitcoin per share multiple, right? And so if this is hard-coded in the regards that this is the current Bitcoin holdings of 8,888. And so we're just curious to see, well, with this dilution, how much Bitcoin do we generate? We were able to generate 26,000, which then turns the total Bitcoin holdings to 35,000, okay? So I hope that you guys were able to walk through all that. That's just the bear case. So if we were, and the only thing that changed here was we increased it to 5, from 3 MNAV to 5 MNAV, while only applying a 25 day delay from the 62. And we're able then to increase the projected shares to 31. Okay. And then the same thing with the bull case, but for 7 MNAV and still keeping it at doubling at 62. And we're able to get 54 or roughly $55 per share. Okay. Now, again, this is assuming flat Bitcoin. What about 1.5 Bitcoin? Well, 1.5 Bitcoin at the bear case is $23. On the base case, it's $47. On the bull case is $82. Okay. Now that's 1.5 Bitcoin. What about 2x Bitcoin, or Bitcoin roughly around $210,000? Then you get projected price of $31 for the bear case with an MNAV of 3, the base case of $62.50, and the bull case of roughly $110. Again, this is on the 6-month projection. What about the 12-month projection? 12-month projection, assuming flat Bitcoin, it was still projected to go up 142% from now at roughly $27. 385% now at $54, and roughly 750% at $94. Now, that's again assuming flat Bitcoin 1 year from now. What happens is 1.5 Bitcoin price 12 months from now? So it'll be $40 for the bear case, $80 at the base case, and $140 at the bull case. Now, if the Bitcoin price is double that 12 months from now, it's at $53 on the bear case, $107 on the base case, and $88 on the bull case. Okay. So, by the way, I want to shout out to Nasty Yaz 88. He is an ex Morgan Stanley investment banker who would help review this model. So, really appreciate him. And so, obviously, there are a lot of things that are not included in that model that we want to talk about, right? And so, what is not included in that model? What's not included in the model is the company that they're working with is issuing the moving strike warrant with a 1% premium. Okay. So they're actually getting paid to dilute. I did not put in the 5% cash secured puts, so that's actively generating the revenue. And especially if Bitcoin is going to go in a positive direction and call it the next 6 to 12 months, those are going to print money, right? Also, I didn't touch upon the fact that they haven't dabbled into the preferred equity market, they haven't dabbled into the convertible bond market, and then they announced that they wanted to raise $250 million from the U.S. Market side with the Miami headquarters. So those are not included as well. Okay, now that is all that I have for today. I'm now going to look into the questions to see if you guys have any questions regarding the model. But if not, in the meantime, I just want to remind you guys again that I am doing this MetaPlanet Madness thing live every Saturday at noon Pacific. I do put a lot of time and energy into this, and I don't ask for anything back other than if you guys found value in it, please like and subscribe, and also retweet the live video. And finally, I don't see any questions that's coming through. So I am going to find a way to provide you guys the model so you guys can play with it yourself. And I will be reposting this onto the Bull Standard on YouTube, like every other MetaPlanet Madness episodes. And so, yeah, that's all that I have for today. I hope that you guys found a lot of value in it. I'm going to try to write a thread on everything I talked about, especially with the assumptions that I used on the price projection model side. But yeah, in the meantime, I hope you guys found it valuable and enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right. My name is Peter, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.